Do you want to know how to plan a stress-free camping trip? I'm going to show you how I prepared and planned for a 17-day camping adventure while camping at 6 different campsites. Hi Weekend Warrior family, or if you're new here, I'm Randy. And every Thursday I share tips to help us make every moment count because weekends are just too short. I want to share tips so that you too can plan a successful extended RV camping trip. Oh, and if you live in the area that I camped at or plan on visiting this area, you might want to copy this itinerary. It's packed with beauty and so many remarkable, breathtaking moments, as you're about to see. Planning this camping trip started over 6 months ago when I did a video showing you how I use the RANDI'S app to locate the best campgrounds. During this video, I was looking for a campground to stay at for a long weekend along the shores of Lake Superior. During this search, I discovered Gooseberry Falls State Park, and this campground has waterfalls. I love waterfalls, so I made a reservation. We originally only had a long weekend to prepare for, so that's all I planned. And then about 30 days before we were to leave, we realized that we would actually have 17 days available to us, and I was really excited, but then I also started to panic. As a weekend warrior, I always try to make every moment count. But with 17 days available, I also wanted to make every moment count because I knew that the time would fly by just as fast. Tip number 1, use a calendar. I printed off a calendar from the internet to have a calendar that wasn't congested with other things. As I made new reservations, I added them to my calendar. Tip number 2, use an app to help you find a campground or campgrounds that you're going to love. I opened up my RANDI'S app, I pinpointed my existing reservation location, then I selected the types of campgrounds I was interested in, and I began searching for nearby campgrounds. As I located campground possibilities, I would first determine if the campground fit my ultimate campground criteria. If a campground took online reservations, I checked that first. If the campground did not take online reservations, I picked up the phone and called them. This was primetime camping season, so finding campgrounds I was interested in and had available campsites took time and patience. I did have a couple of things on my side. Number 1, I have a small camper, the Little Guy Max, which is 18 feet. So my RV camper can fit into most RV campsites. And number 2, I was willing to go without hookups, including electrical. Yes, I was willing to boondock. The first reservation I made was at Brule River State Forest, which is located on our way to Gooseberry Falls State Park. We found ourselves deep in the forest on the Brule River, which was fantastic, so we spent an afternoon kayaking. We brought our own kayaks, but there was a kayak and canoe rental company located just outside of the campground. I loved camping in the forest, and this campground did not disappoint. Tip number 3, consider distance and travel dates. Travel time is a big consideration. I was about 250 miles away from Gooseberry Falls, so I wanted to find campground locations as close to this campground as possible. That way, I'd limit my long-distance travel time between campgrounds. According to Google Maps, my first campground location at Brule River was 3.5 hours away. Well, great, but I know better. When I calculate long-distance travel time, I always add on potty time stops for Princess, occasional food stops, and certainly gas stops. We get about 11 miles per gallon when towing our small travel trailer, the Little Guy Max, and our Toyota Tundra has a 34-gallon gas tank, so there are bound to be additional gas stops along the way. I rely upon the RANDI'S app to locate great campgrounds, but RANDI'S is only available on Apple devices. If you have an Android phone, I have heard that RV Parky is a great app, so give that one a try. Because I previously did an All Stays app demo, I'm not going to go into the full details on how to use the app now, but I will provide a link to that video in the video description below. So, what's the longest camping trip that you've been on? I'd love to know. Let me know in the video description below. Tip number 3, consider distance and travel dates. I wanted to limit the number of long travel days. My goal was to have only 2, the first day and the day we headed back home. So when searching for campgrounds, I wanted to look for options within an hour distance of the campground we were leaving. The next campground I found was Amnicon Falls State Park, and it was only 20 minutes away. And wow, this campground features a series of waterfalls. It was almost magical, and I couldn't resist. I had to go swimming in a waterfall. I was having the time of my life. Tip number 4, determine the number of campgrounds that are reasonable for you to visit. I wanted to do and see as much as I could during my 17 days. And I was okay with moving every 2 to 3 days because it only takes us about 30 minutes to pack up and move. That's a small camper advantage. If you have a bigger RV or it takes you longer to pack up and move, you need to take this into consideration when determining how many campgrounds to include in your itinerary. Our next campground that I stayed at was Gooseberry Falls, the campground I reserved over 6 months ago. This is the second most popular state park in Minnesota, located on the north shore of Lake Superior. And it features several waterfalls, great hiking, and so much more. I'm preparing a special Gooseberry Falls State Park video that will show you just how magnificent this place is, along with tips to make the most of your stay here. So be sure to watch for that video. We were only 7 miles from Split Rock Lighthouse State Park, so one afternoon we went to see if this park was as beautiful as all of the pictures I've seen, and it was. This was a great place to spend the afternoon. Tip number 5, start preparing as early as you can. The next campground we stayed at was Cooke State Park. It featured a swinging bridge, which swayed and gave me a little anxiety, but the views were breathtaking. The key to planning an extended camping trip is to start planning early. I doubt I could have camped at Gooseberry Falls if I hadn't made that reservation so far in advance. If a campground had online reservations, I kept checking back for cancellations and calling. It took time, but it was worth the effort. The further in advance you start planning, the easier it will be to locate amazing places. Tip number 6, just have fun. There's nothing better than camping. My last reservation was at Pattison State Park, and this park features the tallest waterfall in Wisconsin. It was a nice campground, but I was so close to Lake Superior, I really wanted to spend my last couple of days on the shoreline if I could. So I opened my All Stays app and found a couple of possibilities, so we packed up and headed towards Lake Superior. I lucked out and found a campsite on a city campground that works on a first-come, first-served basis. There was just one campsite available, and our neighbors told us it had just become available. And it was right across the street from the shore, so we enjoyed walking on the beach and magnificent sunsets. As I mentioned, this was an RV boondocking camping trip. And if you want to learn more about ins and outs of boondocking, subscribe to my channel by hitting the subscribe button and the bell located right below this video. That way you'll be notified when I do publish that video and I share everything I know. Well, that's all for this week, and I can't wait to see you next Thursday.